Hello and welcome to this Examine Chess video. Today we're looking at another Philidor game from his book, Examining the Game of Chess. And this is a very interesting game in the way that White builds up his position, White being Philidor, and abusing his pawns in order to create a winning position. There are obviously a few mistakes from Black, but then again, this is a game that was played an estimated 250 years ago. Also, there are not one, but two rook exchange sacrifices happening from Philidor, and this is one of, or two rather, of the main reasons for why he achieved this winning position. So let's go ahead and check out the game without any further ado. So White, or Philidor, starts out with e4, Black responding with e5, bishop c4, bishop c5, pawn to c3, knight to f6. So again, we're following quite a few steps of the previous game, and so the best estimate that we have is that this was opening theory at the time. So obviously we have a bishop's opening and the knight coming out to attack the undefended e-pawn. d4 coming with a tempo on the bishop. ed, cd, and bishop to d6. Knight to c3, simply defending the pawn. And there is, obviously, after castles, just quickly taking a look at this variation, after knight takes on e4, knight takes on e4, d5, winning the piece back, is obviously a continuation that could be played, but wasn't. So again, we're considering this to be opening theory. Game continuing with c6, bishop to d3, d5, e5, knight to e8, bishop to e3, f6, queen to d2. Simply, again, defending this bishop in the event of bishop capturing on e3, so that you can recapture with the queen and not the pawn. F takes on e5, d takes on e5, and we have the bishop capturing on e3. And the queen recapturing. So as compared to the previous game, where this was simply ignored and the bishop to e6 was played, we do have the exchange going on in this game. And the game continues with bishop to e6, knight to f4, attacking the bishop, queen to e7, defending, knight takes on e6, and queen takes on e6, and white castling kingside. So now we can see that there are some differences in the position. White has a potential target here, which obviously can easily be defended, but it's a potential target in the current position. Black also has a majority over on the queen side and has a passed pawn, but it's in the center, so it's going to be quite difficult to get it rolling at this point in time, especially with all of these pieces hanging around here. Also, we can see that in the current position that White's king is safer than Black, simply because of the f-pawns. White has a generally better position because of this passed pawn, and also because of the development, if we compare the minor pieces. Space-wise, though, it's fair to say that Black has an advantage on the queen side because of mainly this pawn, which has been anchored in a nice pawn chain, though White is ready to grab a lot of space on the king side. So, continuing with the game, we have knight to d7, simply attacking the pawn, and f4 defending it. So now the argument of king safety sort of drops out. Regardless, Black continues with g6, which has two main ideas in mind. One of them is to give room for this knight to jump into the game, and the other one is to prevent this pawn advance. So in the event of the pawn being pushed, you would simply capture it. So the game continues with h3, simply preparing to play g4 and f5. This is what White is playing to do in this game. He wants to use his majority over here and simply go ahead and queen his pawn. That's his long-term plan. Knight was played to g7. Now again controlling this square, and hopefully he wants to. His idea is to activate the knight here and then be attacking the queen, gaining a tempo, and trying to solidifying the knight here, probably with something like h5 happening, and so that in order of so let's quickly think about knight jumping in, queen moving somewhere, maybe here is better. Then we would see the pawn being pushed, and in the event of the pawn being pushed in order to get rid of the knight, after an exchange of pawns here, the knight would be able to move somewhere, I'm guessing, and then, well, not here, probably back here, and then the queen capturing this pawn here would check. So this is sort of what Black is hoping to do, but Philidor obviously puts a stop to this immediately with g4. And the game continues with c5 and knight to e2. In this position, though, the best move, according to the engines, and a very nice idea actually, is to play g5. And you are stating that, or rather you are forcing White to make a decision with this pawn. Either you move it or you lose it, is the intended idea. So in the event of pushing it, which would be the preferred choice, obviously, we would see queen capture on, or rather the queen capturing on e5. And so after a queen exchange, you have Black has a very nicely posted knight on the e5 square, which is going to be difficult to get rid of, to say the least. So after bishop retreating and the rook coming over, it's going to be defended. It's not a very pleasant position for White to be in. So he will. I'm going to go ahead and claim that he was lucky that his opponent did not spot this very, very nice g5 pawn push, which would also quickly mentioning that if you capture it, we would see basically the same continuation. There is no real threat that one could make with this pawn, and it's simply going to be weak. You can't really push this pawn because you would lose this one, and so it's a pretty bad position to be in at that point. So knight to e2, and the game continues with d4. I should also quickly mention that there is a subtle move here from White, which would be queen to e2. And so the idea being that you cannot push this pawn because of this very uncomfortable pin happening to the queen here. So something like takes, takes, and takes even would lose quite quickly to something like this. Even if you defend it, I can just push my pawn, and at some point you're going to lose this knight. No, actually you don't, but after this, it's rather uncomfortable. So you would have to move this one, probably here. Yeah, maybe here. Not sure, not exactly sure what I prefer, but moving it here comes sort of with a tempo on this one, trying to lock down the queen. Also, you have two very nicely positioned knights here, and this would obviously be. Actually, let's go ahead and quickly add. Never mind. It's a winning position for White, I do believe, but only slightly, simply because of these weaknesses and the ability that White has to create passed pawns in order to push them to victory. But let's go ahead and get back to the game. So after d4, we see queen to d2. And the game continues with knight to b6. Black is trying to place this knight in the white position and create mischief is the idea. So knight to g3, and black continuing with the plan, going knight to d5. rook from a to e1, and the knight jumping into e3. And this is a very uncomfortable piece to have around, especially considering the how close it is to the king. It would not be impossible to be able to create some kind of an attack going on with the knight being here. The knight is simply too strong, and so Philidor realized this and decided to play rook takes e3. Pawn takes and queen takes was played, and black, being greedy, decided to grab on a2. f5, simply pushing the pawn. This is his intended idea, and with all of this support happening, there is going to be a passed pawn, without a doubt. So the queen captures on b2, simply being greedy, and we have f6. Now, instead of playing knight to e6, we have knight to e8, with the intended idea of simply sacrificing the knight for, obviously after rook capturing, but sacrificing the knight for these two very dangerous pawns. And so Philidor puts a stop to this by playing g5. Queen comes to d4, simply saying that I want the queens off the board with this pin to the king. Queen takes, pawn takes, and we have e6. Simply pushing the pawns. It's a slow and methodical way of playing. Knight to d6. Again, having two ideas in mind. One of them is to activate the knight in order to block the rook's communication with the pawn, so that it's going to be difficult to push it. And the other one being that if you push this pawn now, I'm going to capture it, and after you recapture, rook takes, and then king takes, would be the idea. But Philidor puts a stop to this with knight to e4, and obviously black doesn't want to exchange these. He wants to... sorry, I think I said Philidor, but his opponent doesn't want to exchange. He wants to disrupt the communication here. And so that's what he thought he was doing, while in fact he was giving Philidor the last sort of needle in the coffin, you could say. So rook takes on f5, pawn takes, and knight to d6. And to his opponent, it seemed like Philidor was simply interested in grabbing this pawn, which maybe he was. I'm not going to claim that he wasn't, but the losing move was made now with pawn to f4. There is simply too much power in these two pawns, and he's in a losing position at this point. His opponent is. And the game continues with e7. The best move is not really clear. I believe it is to play rook fd8 or maybe even rook fc8. But because his opponent was greedy, he decided to play the rook all the way over to the b8 square, because all of these squares are covered by the knight and the pawn. And so he wanted to keep his material, which he was going to have to give up at some point, like even the simple position like this, which would then be losing for white though, but would force you to give up the exchange. And so simply placing the rook here, and well, actually that loses even more, just thinking about this, because this comes with a check, whereas the pawn is defended. So I believe the best move was to play the rook here, or maybe here. Yeah, I think it was here actually. So after pawn takes, rook takes, it comes with a tempo on this one. Grabbing here wouldn't really help you. Well, would help you a little, I guess. But regardless, the game continues with bishop to c4 check. And it's a very peculiar position to look at this, because the king is completely cut off from the rest of the board, only having these two squares to move on. So king to h8 is obviously forced, and the knight jumps into f7. King only has one move, and knight to d8 check is a discovered check from the bishop to the king, and blocking off the rook's communication with the queening squares. And so obviously the king only has one legal move, which is to move to the corner, and then we have the simple e8 equals queen checkmate. And so this was a game that we felt that we learned a lot from, simply because of the simple, or rather the simpleness of using the pawns, and it's very nice to be able to learn about pawn play from someone who was that, meaning Philidor, who was that respected within the game. So yeah, we thank you so much for watching this video, and we hope that you would feel welcome to subscribe, and also check out our other social medias such as Facebook and Twitter. And remember that you also can check out the Examine Chess blog. And so without any further ado, thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic day. Cheers and bye.